I didn't have a very great childhood. I shattered my leg on the field in the middle of a game, and my athletic career was over like in an instant. Getting involved in drugs and alcohol to
I've
try to
watched you do several unboxing
like
videos.
if your product sucks, then all your marketing is a lie. And so I
How does that differ when you're talking brand building or brand launching or brand growth? Joining us today, we've got Craig Francis, a storyteller, a creative who works with words and pictures to help brands connect on a human level. A volunteer with Big Sky Bravery, which serves active duty special forces personnel. Recently engaged, although I'm going to update that to recently married, theoretically on paper. And also just made a big move across the country from Montana out to Georgia. Career began with the success of a social media venture that you founded, that Craig founded, which later pivoted into content creation service. And over the years, Craig has gained experience in agencies as well as in-house roles, teaching others, helping brands refine their voice and messaging. Craig is now currently the vice president of brand for Ultra View Archery based out of Norcross, Georgia. And the last piece I'm going to put in here is this is one of the, if not the most respected individuals that exists and thrives in a community that I'm not necessarily a part of, that I can say without a doubt has such a high level of respect from other people, different pockets that they don't even know each other, but I've heard on multiple different accounts from people that know Craig. Very highly regarded. How do we
thank
do?
you. Thank you, man. It was very kind. You did great. Super accurate. No notes. 10 out of 10.
Love it. Love it. So that's true. There's just a quick backstory. On several different occasions, but I'm just going to give one account. On several different occasions, I have been working on a shoot somewhere or just randomly striking up conversation with people. And I come across somebody who, one of the questions I like to ask people is like, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? Not what do you do for work, but what do you like to do, right? Your spare time. And several different occasions, the answer is, oh, yeah, I like to hunt and do this and so on. And I go, oh, the only real hunter that I know, and obviously I drop your name, and these people are like, oh my God, I love Craig, man. He's so awesome. Whether they've met you in person or they just have been a longtime follower of yours online on Instagram, they're just like raving about you. And my experience as well, one of the reasons I'm so pumped for this interview is because when we first met, which was fall 2020, I believe it was, uh, I was shooting, it was on set shooting for Sitka. First time, first experience with modeling for a hunting brand for me. So I didn't really know much about anything. I didn't grow up hunting. I don't have a lot of friends that grew up hunting. I do have some, but it was never really like a let's chat about this because we just didn't have that overlap of interest. So you were the very first person to completely like wide open my eyes to see not just hunting, but hunters in a totally different way. And that happened on set while we were just kind of chopping it up about your life, your background. And now here we are, over a decade, you've made a career in the world of hunting. And from if you ask a lot of people, they're going to say it's the dream career. Each step that you've made, which is very calculated, it seems, has turned into what a lot of people say is the dream career. Oh man, that guy's living it up. He's living my dream. So, what I'm hoping to do here in our time together is unpack that a little bit, how you go about choosing the next move, because they all do seem very calculated. How you have made a career in this space pursuing passion where so many people settle for, I got to pay this bill or that bill, and they justify the 9 to 5 that they feel miserable in rather than feel miserable pursuing the passion. And sometimes you have those times, right? So I
Yeah.
want to unpack some of that, get into a little bit of your hunting story. And what I hope here is that we can kind of relive that experience I had on set with you that was so eye-opening to me,
Mm.
where I think there's a lot of justice that needs to be served to hunters, the hunting community, and what that's like for people who are just completely disconnected, like I was, and like I still am, to be honest. So that's kind of the goal for today. And if things go well, that's what we'll be able to answer all of these and maybe some more stuff along the way.
Excellent. Well, that's very generous. Thank you for the kind intro. And I do want to say, if that's kind of the direction we want to take it, I speak for myself and myself alone. I don't pretend to be representative of the entire lifestyle of hunters across this country. My perspective is my own. I'm not shy of an opinion, and I'm happy to share what I think. But in no way, shape, or form do I pretend that I represent this entire lifestyle, which is so ingrained into the heritage of this country. But I have a sharp perspective which feels true to me. And so I'm happy to speak to that, and kind of we can walk through career-wise, professionally, like how I've gotten involved and how that started, and kind of wherever you want to take it, man.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Let's start first and foremost, super basic, but you can get as detailed as you like. Why is hunting the way?
Um, Man, I'll tell you, it's important to me just because of um, it gives me a lens through which to interact with the landscape and the natural world that provides me solitude, provides me fresh air. It gives me something to do which has no definitive endpoint. It's not a game that can be won. It's a mechanism that forces me to live in a certain way. Um, I think that really started for me. Um, Really, if we just like dive into just dive into it. I didn't have a very great childhood, and my grandfather and my dad would like I grew up in a hunting family, and being outside hunting with my grandfather and my dad are some of the only good memories that I have when I was a little kid. Um, I started playing. I played soccer all the way through college until sophomore year. I was a goalkeeper, broke my leg, and athletics was kind of over for me at that point. But I kind of left hunting as my athletic career picked up in high school and into college. And then after school, like I was an athlete through and through. And then I shattered my leg on the field in the middle of a game, and my athletic career was over like in an instant. And I put the bulk of my identity into being an athlete, and I had aspirations of playing professionally. And whether or not those were realistic aspirations is not really the point. The point was I was about it.
Yeah.
And then in an instant, that was all taken from me. And I really struggled to know who I was apart from being an athlete. And then a couple years of really like wallowing in some unhealthy headspace, getting involved in drugs and alcohol to try to like ail my wound on my spirit. I ended up meeting a group of guys at Clemson University where I transferred after I broke my leg, and they were hunters. And I'd grown up hunting, but I hadn't hunted in probably 7 or 8 years in any real way because I'd been chasing the sports thing.
Mhm.
And as I got to know those guys, they invited me to go hunting. I got into bow hunting at that time. This is about 2009, which would really like change the course of my life. I didn't know it at that point. But for me, when I started hunting again as an adult, and it was like a choice that I made to spend time with those guys, spend time outside. What I found in the solitude that can be kind of a foundational component of hunting. It doesn't have to be. I like to hunt solo. It's kind of like part of what the specialness of it is the quiet, is the solitude, is the introspection. But what I found in that is it gave me time to consider, to slow down. It was like a forcing function to hunt effectively. You got to be quiet. You got to be still. You need to study the terrain that you're on, and it forces you to focus.
Mhm.
And for the first time in a number of years at that point in my life, it was something to focus on that felt healthy, and it felt good, and it felt natural, and it felt like a way that I could kind of just like involve myself in what at the time was still just a hobby,
Mhm.
but it felt clean. And I was coming off of so many things in my life that were not clean. And it just kind of made sense to me to really like, I'm going to revisit this thing that I loved from my childhood that meant a lot to me in my youth. And now I'm going to choose to approach it uh, in a different way as a young adult at that time. And so hunting for me just became like a form of solace. It became, you know, long days outside by myself became like the first therapist that I ever had. And I've had
Mm.
many since then. But just getting still, getting quiet, listening to the wind, interacting with the landscape became like a solve to my mind, which was pretty tumultuous at the time. Um, and I came to love it in at first like a very selfish way of like what it did for me.
Mhm.
And I think I just really needed something at that time in my life, and that was the thing that I had. And so I kind of dove all in on it and learned as much as I could. And I'm still in that cycle, man. Hunting. I'm not someone who I can be cursed by being extremely goal oriented.
Mhm.
I have found that to be not a great way to live for my personality type because I have like, you know, an hour a day, a weekend of feeling triumphant in whatever I have just overcome. And then the pit of despair after that is like, well, I need a whole new thing to feel any kind of happiness again. And I won't have it until I reach that mountaintop. And then I'll live there for a very short while and then it's straight back to the bottom. I wish that I was not that way, but I am. I like really am.
Yeah.
And so I like things that have no definitive endpoint. They're games that cannot be won. Um, Mastery is not possible. It is you submit yourself to a process.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite sayings, progress is not a destination, it's a trajectory. And so with hunting, it just became this instrument that was became a core piece of my life to submit myself to a process that put me on a trajectory that I just enjoyed. And so being outside, learning about animals, getting in the sunlight and the fresh air, exploring new methods and modes and locations of hunting. And then really once I started moving out west, it was like a whole different world opened up to me with the ability to access public land in Montana, where I lived for 5 years. Um, and so hunting just became like, man, this is awesome. This is a forever game. And as long as I don't get eaten by a bear or something crazy, like I could do this for a super long time. And I don't have a lot of hobbies, man. And hunting to me is like it's not a hobby anymore. It's a way that I interact with the world. It's more like a lifestyle.
Right.
A lot of people say that, and it can come across like pretty cheesy, but it maps to how I build my schedule, how I choose my to spend my vacation time. Um, the wife that I chose, like all of it is like very ingrained in the thing that I love. And so it has become like I don't want to say the cornerstone of my life because that's overly dramatic. That would be like the faith component of my life is absolutely the cornerstone of my life. But my calendar year, the things that I think are fun, the places that I want to go in the world, it's like all kind of circles around. Like, do you think I could like walk around in a wild place out there with like a bow or a rifle in my hand and like secure some food and have a relatively spiritual experience? Like, is that possible there? If it's yes, I'm about it. I would like to go. If it's no, it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, we go take some pictures. That's neat. I
Yeah.
got Leica cameras over there on the shelf. Like I do photos.
Yeah.
It's like my interest level in going physical places on this planet is largely dictated by are there huntable populations of critters that I find interesting there?
Yeah. That is so brilliant. And I think it's relatable across the board because there's people like, I come from a golf background and there are
Mhm.
people who plan everything around golf. What's out there? What courses are there? No, I'd rather go this place because of the courses available and so on. So that's totally relatable, I think, across a lot of different lifestyle choices and things. But I want to go back to something kind of back to the darker phase in early adulthood, post
Mm,
leg break. And I'm thinking of somebody who might be listening to this when they are in their dark era,
mm,
where some reason they come across this chat that you and I are having. And one of the questions that I'm curious about that will hopefully serve somebody in that space is, if you go back to where you were when you made that kind of pivot back into hunting, where you were like, this is the only thing I'm interested in that is actually healthy. Do you think that rewind 6 months or a year, however long before you made that kind of discovery or rediscovery, do you think you would have had the same experience? Or did you kind of get to a point where you were, I'm fed up with this just disgusting lifestyle, the choices that I'm making, whatever, and you reached that point and then hunting showed up again for you? So I guess put simply, was this the right timing that you met these guys, or had you already been searching and they just came about? Or if you were in a darkest hour and hunting showed up again in the form of these guys at Clemson, would you still have answered that call?
um, yeah, it's a good question. We'll give a little more context and then I'll circle around to working through how I'd like to answer that. Like I said before, I didn't really have, I didn't have a great childhood, kind of tumultuous home life, parents, divorce, stepfather, just had a lot of stuff going on. Um, and I try, I'm pretty open with my story at this point, but I do like to be careful not to portions of my story that are shared with other people. I try not to disparage them or tell their story because it's theirs to tell, not mine.
Yeah.
But what I can say is, I had a lot of poor behavior modeled for me when I was a kid. And so when I encountered stress or conflict, I had bad coping mechanisms that were modeled for me as a kid that were pretty deeply ingrained that I just thought was normal. And so that coupled with I'm an athlete, I was very serious about my training. I was kind of already just like the bend of my personality is like all or nothing. And so I shattered my leg on the field in March of 2007, have emergency surgery. I get septic after surgery, I almost die. I have a bad reaction to some medication that they gave me. Um, and then that was like kind of in the late stages, arguably still the heyday of medical distribution of Oxycontin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went down the opiate path, not really by my own choosing. I'd never been involved with drugs prior to that. I always viewed them as people that use drugs are weak
Mm-hmm.
and they are trying to solve a problem that they don't know how to solve, and this is the only way they do it. And it turns out I was right about that, but my attitude towards it like could not have been more backwards. Um, I didn't know that I was an addict until I was one. And then by that time, it was like really too late.
Yeah.
And so I was mixing opiates and alcohol in the way that classically people do. Um, I had uh, a super bad night. My friends should have taken me to the hospital. They did not. I was not trying to kill myself, but it surprised me the next day that I wasn't dead.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really like kind of a startling wake up call. Like it was genuinely an accident. It was not like a suicide attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just way overdid it. And then I was just in that space and woke up the next day and it kind of scared the hell out of me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to die. I was not healthy, but I didn't want to die. And I can say that with confidence because there were other times later in my life when I absolutely wanted to die.
Mm-hmm.
But that night scared the hell out of me. I woke up the next day. I remember I was still at the school that I was playing soccer at. I'd like quit going to class. is a very like prestigious academic institution, Wofford College, in Spartanburg, South Carolina. They call it the Harvard of the South. It's like very difficult liberal arts, like highly, doctors and lawyers is what they churn out of there. I
Mhm.
was just like a dumb jock that had no business academically being at that school. Um, but I um I called my mom, who was a registered nurse, and I was like, I think I almost killed myself on accident last night. I cannot stay here. My life is in a complete disarray and turmoil. Like, I gotta go.
Mhm.
And so I dropped out of school and was really looking for anything to. I knew somehow innately that I needed a drastic change of environment,
Yeah.
or I would not, I would just keep doing what I was doing. And through some like super odd, like I cannot remember how I came upon this, but I discovered Knowles, which is the National Outdoor Leadership School, um, which is still operational around the world. But the punchline is they do wilderness education, and they run courses, and some of them are like a week, and then some of them are a full year. And I'd always like loved being outside and hiking around and doing stuff like from my childhood. I somehow stumbled upon that you could get college credit through the University of Utah, going to a Knowles course. And
Mhm.
so I was like, I don't know, this seems like a good idea. And so I kicked it around, just like trying to suss out what was possible if I do this, like what kind of degree. My parents were very much, my mom and my stepdad were very much like, you're going to get a degree like that. They are those people.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, I don't need to be at a traditional college. Like, it's not good for me right now. Here's this thing where I can go live in the wilderness for what turned out to be 88 days, basically roughly 3 months semester. And I can get 15 hours of college credit, which are transferable to degrees like X, Y, and Z. Um, I think this would be really good for me. Long story short, I convinced them that that was a good idea. And I went and I did a Knowles semester in the Southwest course, which is headquartered in Tucson, Arizona. And I went rock climbing and caving in New Mexico. And we did canoe on the Rio Grande down through Big Bend National Park along the Texas-Mexico border, and backpacking course in the Kofa Wilderness, which is the western border of Arizona and California, way up in the high desert, and just spent like 90 days outside. Um, and out there in the fresh air, that was the first time where I was like exposed to long stints of wilderness adventure where you are tracking your circadian rhythm with the natural order of things, sunrise and sunset. Everything that you own is on your back. And if it's cold, you better have a jacket. If it's raining, you need to find a way to stay dry. And it was just like all of my existence came into what could I carry on my person. Um, and it was awesome, man. I super loved it. That was really where my love for solitude was born. We would do these. I remember what we called them. Basically, you'd go out by yourself for like 3 days. You'd make it's called a RAD plan, route and design, and you would tell your fellow classmates like, here's a map. This is where we are now. This is where I'm going to go, and I will be back at this time 3 days from now. If I'm not back, here are the alternate routes that I'm going to pre-plan that I might take if I encounter trouble of some kind. Look for me in these areas if I'm not back in 72 hours. And we did several of those. And those trips were like super, like changed my life, man. Like I just sitting out in the desert by yourself, listening to the coyotes howl, watching, eagles soar across the desert. Like it was awesome. Just like this is, I'm glad that I'm alive is really like what I took away from that.
Mhm.
Um, so that was to circle back to your question. That season is what I needed more than anything, and I didn't. know that I would need it as much as I did until I was out there. And then that coursework that I was doing, which was like, a geology course and a risk management course and a couple other things, ended up being transferable for a degree program at Clemson, which is historically where like my mom and my grandfather and all my uncles, everybody goes to Clemson. I was the first person to not go to Clemson because I wasn't good enough to play soccer at Clemson. I went to a smaller school. So I transferred to Clemson, and then I met those guys that I would end up going hunting with several months later. And it kind of just like rolled into us naturally hanging out and starting to go hunting. And now don't get me wrong, I still was not healthy. I was healthier than I had been, but I was still, doing the college like party drinking thing, hanging out, running around with girls in a way that was not appropriate. Just I didn't learn how to um, I still had a ton of like maladaptive coping mechanisms and behaviors. And I wouldn't figure that out for a very long time. But I think that had I not gone on that Knowles course, my life would be wildly different. And then had I not met those friends at Clemson that invited me to go hunting, which really did like change the course of my life, it would be difficult for me to say here now, 16, 17 years hence, like where I would be or what I would be doing. But it was certainly good that I made those homies when I did, man. Like
Yeah.
I needed them bad. And those guys, several of them, they were groomsmen in my first wedding, which is an indicator of like I didn't figure out my stuff until too late, and I've been married and divorced before. They stood beside me in that first wedding, and two of those same guys are going to stand by me in my next one coming up in a few months. And so those are guys that I attribute like real life giving friendship to, um, and have stuck by me at times when they probably shouldn't have, to be honest. Uh, and I hope that everybody has some friends like that, uh, that'll carry you when you need it. And yeah, man, hey, come, my uncle's got a property. Why don't you come hunting with us? Like it really was a catalyst for me to try to get on a good path, and has shaped my professional career, shaped the friends that I have, uh, how I live my life, where I wanted to live in the country. Like all of it is just like those guys ushered me back into something that I had known when I was a kid in a way that really has meant a lot to me.
Yeah. Damn. That Oh man, there's so much that I want to unpack from all of that, which for one, the big thing that's just a flashing sign to me is if you are at least aware enough that you are not living a healthy life right now, you're making bad decisions, whether that's addiction or you're in control and consciously making bad decisions, that one of the best ways out is to get outside. But
Mm,
if that's not your jam, whatever you choose, just choose something that is a healthy outlet.
yeah.
So instead of joining people to go to a drinking party or a drinking club or a cigar lounge club or whatever it is, that's obviously not making your socially, it might be nice because you're bonding with other people, but it's not making you more healthy overall. So find something to plug in that is just at least not detrimental to your health.
Yeah.
Ideally, it improves your health. So that's key. But outside, I'm a big fan of that as well. I love the outdoors
Yeah,
as
man.
well.
I'll tell you one of my first trying to just swap patterns of behavior in my early to mid 20s. I went down like a pretty serious bodybuilding rabbit hole,
Mhm.
and like did that whole like white rice and chicken and weigh my food and count macros. I did all that for like 4 years, and dude, I was way into it.
Mhm.
Um, it was a good ramp to like, it requires a ton of focus, dedication, like stay on top of your sleep, which is that I think really, if I look back on that portion of my life, that helped me get healthy like incrementally more than anything else. Is like I want to get jacked because I grew up as a skinny kid and I used to get picked on, and this is a way for me to like rage against the machine.
Yep.
What that forces you to do is like you're a fitness guy, you know, if you're not sleeping well, then everything else doesn't work. And so
Right.
that forced me to stop drinking as much as I was because drinking heavily impacts your sleep.
Mhm.
And I started like trying to get 8 or 9 hours. And I think that uh, really helped like heal my brain from some of the destructive like substance abuse, just like several years of like really taking seriously my nutrition and my sleep. I was still like really unhealthy at a spiritual level, and relationally, I was a train wreck.
Mhm.
Um, but like the idea that if I want to be big and strong, it requires me to eat good food, be dedicated in my training, and be serious about getting quality sleep. That was the first thing that really started to pick me out of a lot of the poor decisions that I was making. And so to your point, I really agree. Like if you can, you're not going to get healthy overnight. Like it's a tremendous amount of work. And I say that as someone who is like in recovery now and forever, always. Like it's a tremendous amount of work. Um, but incremental steps are a good place to start. And so if you have like a ton of energy that you're pouring into something that is like objectively really bad for you, going from that to I'm totally sober and the healthiest person ever is just like that is not the trajectory. But
Mhm.
make one incremental step into just divert your energy from this thing that is bad into something that is like less bad is a that's a fine target at first and get to good later, but like
Yep.
just a little less bad.
Yep.
Um, because you're you're going to have to change so much about your life, and doing it all at once can be very daunting. Now, there are people that absolutely need to try to do everything at once because they won't make it if they don't. I have flirted with that on a number of occasions, but for the sake of the point that you're making, I fully agree that just trying to shift some energy into something that is like net positive is a great stepping stone to take.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think another key aspect, if you can combine these with that, right? You make a good choice of where you're going to put your time and energy and just make it less bad than where you have been. And another key component to that is community building.
Mm,
And community building, it kind of it's an odd term because it seems like you pick up a hammer and you have these tools that you have to build your community, but in reality, a lot of times it's choosing something that's a healthier option and going and spending time in that, and then naturally you're going to be around other people, which brings me to an interesting point. Let me see how I could best frame this. Hunting and hunters, to me, who I've never been in that world, I'm 35 years old, never been in that world, and what the assumption is, like when I think of what is a hunter, give me their characteristics.
mm,
No part of that to me when I think of a hunter would have been community, good friends. It would have been individual solitude, leave me alone. I don't have good bonds with people. I'm a recluse. And what I'm gathering from you, and I want to ideally see if we can unpack this a little bit, is I could see the level of impact that these friends that you've made through hunting have had on your life and continue to have on your life. I mean, you started to get emotional. Like I could see some
yeah.
emotion welling in you as you're thinking of these guys, which is almost, it just seems like it's the opposite of what the expectation of a hunter is. It's like you're a big, burly, bearded man who totes guns and, all these things. You go out and you take the life of another living being and all these things. It's like, yet just the thought of these friends that you have made in this pursuit of a passion of yours just the thought of them and what you guys have been through together and how they've supported you, it makes you feel some immense emotion. So I'm curious if you can kind of unpack what this bond has, whoever you want to pick or all of them all together, thread that. What is what is it like to build such strong bonds through hunting?
Hmm. Um, I don't know that it is all that dissimilar from another hobby or lifestyle in which you need to dedicate a large amount of time and energy to track towards some like unknown goal. Like I think hunting is just the vehicle that was interesting to myself and this group of guys. I think you could do it with anything. The community aspect is I think you rightly assess like that is that's the actual catalyst is being around like-minded people and developing a kinship over shared interests. And ideally, if you're finding people that also share like similar life goals and core values as people, then you're really getting some of the foundational building blocks of like lifelong friendship. Um, I think tactically speaking, some of your kind of like assumptions about hunters being rugged solitude, like all that's true. I certainly am that way at times. I think the only distinction that I can draw is when I was in college with these guys, we would go duck hunting most
Mm-hmm.
often, and that is a much more communal, typically, it doesn't have to be, but you do it with a group of people other than, solo archery, backcountry elk hunting, which is what I happen to enjoy now. Um, we duck hunted a lot, and it's conducive to having three, four, five, six guys together, long road trip for, we would, this is early days before, do you remember Duck Dynasty TV show with
Of
the,
course I do.
okay, yeah. So this is before that, but we would
Mhm.
drive from South Carolina to Arkansas to hunt public, flooded timber, the whole nine yards. You know, it's kind of a hunting public. If any hunting people listen to this now, like this is 2009, 10, like
Mhm.
early, certainly it was happening. It's a completely different landscape now. People like me, people from Arkansas would say that people like me are a part of the problem, why it got blown up, and now it's a zoo. Um, Maybe that's true. I don't know. We certainly didn't have the methods and means of social media communication to the degree that we do now. Back then, I don't think it was totally my fault. But we would just hunt together a lot, take these 12-hour road trips, go to Arkansas, stay in like super divey motels for as cheap as possible. For a couple of opening day of duck season in Arkansas typically coincides with Thanksgiving. Um, when we were in college, I think we had a gas station Subway for Thanksgiving meal like 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
It was like pretty dodgy, and just generally like uncouth young male behavior, but it
Yeah.
was like the thing that we were into.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, we just kind of connected over that shared interest around waterfowl hunting. And then, you know, bow hunting can be like a much more solitary adventure, depending on how you're doing it. The idea of like in the southeast where I grew up in South Carolina, I'm now back in Georgia, but then like really a lot of the whitetail hunting states, which is like the east, southeast, and Midwest, like deer camp is a thing where you like all stay in a cabin and then you kind of go out as individuals during the day, but then you come back. So there's like a different levels of community.
Hmm.
And then, when I was in Montana, it was like there's so much publicly accessible land out here. I can carry my backpack and go for 7 days and not see another person if I pick a good spot. And I just got really romantic about that. Um, and so just a lot of different ways to interact with people in what I call like capital H hunting, which is inclusive of like all forms of hunting.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, man, I think that I enjoy all types and flavors of it now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it seems to emit through your work and through the things that you share and you help create and curate.
Thank you, man.
What, absolutely. What is one of the things that I think was it's so fascinating to me. I knew when we met, years ago, I was like, I want to sit down and interview this guy. And obviously it hasn't happened until now. So 4.5 years later, I've thought about this interview so much. Almost every time I see a post from you, I think about this. And one of the things that I love is a post that I remember. I don't know how long ago it was that you shared. I think we've all seen those memes where it's like very niched down to whatever it is, where it's like, oh, this is the type of person you are if you choose this thing. And I remember seeing a post from you about the caliber of round you
Oh,
use.
yeah,
and and to me, and I was cracking up because you have to have a certain level of knowledge to be able to understand and
yeah.
appreciate something like that, but you have to have a whole different level to be able to create something like that. So when I saw this post from you, I was like, man, I know you're in this space, I know you hold these titles and all these things, but again, I'm not in this community, so I don't know to what level really you live and the knowledge that you carry. And so when I saw that, that was an indicator to me because even the comments, everybody was rolling and they're like, this is so spot on. And that to me was just a testament to how dedicated you are truly to the craft, because the caliber of round isn't necessarily, it's just so specific, right? And to take something so specific and be like, this is your character, right? Because it's the same thing in golf, different brands, different club,
Yep.
a
Yep.
lot of things. But what I'm interested in is your pursuit of knowledge. You've reached different levels of success over the years in your career pursuing this stuff, and you've made some really calculated career moves from this brand or this decision or going it alone or whatever. And I'm just fascinated with, how do you stay so hungry to continue learning about this stuff? I understand you're passionate about it, but there are times where there's burnout, right? You spend so
Yeah.
much time, especially when you're working in your passion, you spend so much time in it. So many things go to, the back burner, or just completely, I'm going to choose to not pursue that. Even though I think it's really cool, I'm choosing to not pursue it because that would take time away from me learning and developing and furthering my skill set and my knowledge in this area, this arena. So my question to you is, how do you stay so dedicated to continually learning and sharpening your craft?
Uh, you gotta love it, man. If you don't love it, you'll quit. Like, I think that I've done a lot of different things in my career, man. I worked in ministry after college, which is a whole other story. I poured concrete. I worked at Starbucks. I spent 4,000 hours on a coffee roaster working for a Brazilian holding company doing quality control for like some of the most rare high-end coffees in the country. And then I started like following my buddies around the woods with a camera because I just liked hunting. And it was like the thing that stuck. Um, for me, staying hungry and like staying after it, I follow my natural interests. I I want to explore ideas that I think are interesting. And um, this sounds arrogant. I really don't mean it that way. Like, I don't really care what other people think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this way is interesting to me over here. So, like, I'm gonna go. And your reference of that viral video that I made, yeah, I grew up shooting guns. I'm a big 2A advocate. I work with military. Like, I like guns. Um, that was just like, honestly, it's just like a shit post of people that are into like way down the rabbit hole of gun culture because people pick like this is the caliber that I believe is the best, and I will associate my entire identity with the tribe of people that believe the same as me. It's just like, that's kind of crazy to me because I'm like, there's a right tool for the job. And if it's a different job, pick a different tool. And a lot of people in gun culture
Yeah.
don't agree with that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the old saying, like, don't shoot a high caliber man with a low caliber bullet. Like,
Hmm.
maybe just choose a different bullet. Was kind of like I was just poking fun at people. But
Yeah.
your point of like, that's super niche interests. I think that internet culture rewards people that dive into niche subject matter because you have to have a sharp point of view on things to gain any kind of traction. Um, I have always believed that the way that you have the drive to self educate or pursue um, some tangential subject matter that is really like not widely discussed is like you just like the wind is coming from this way. So let's see if that's interesting over there. You just have to try and taste stuff.
Yeah.
And if you do that for long enough, you will determine what do I like? Why do I like it? And just as important, what don't I like and why don't I like it? And
Hmm.
then after you're kind of calibrating along that pathway, your ability to self-regulate your own journey becomes it's just much sharper vision of, you know, I I have an opportunity come this way at me that objectively to the world is like, you should explore that. I immediately am like, hey, thank you, but absolutely not. Like, this is not in my wheelhouse. I have no desire to explore this, but here's somebody that I think that you should talk to instead of me, who, based on the relationships that I have, I think they might be interested. So I like to connect dots. But for
Hmm.
myself, like, I know what I'm into. And that, honestly, like, as I'm saying this, one of the things that I'm presently working on is to not be um I want to open the calibration dial up like a little bit. I've had it very honed in for a while.
Hmm.
And I've had stuff, not I don't regret any of the things that I've said no to because I think there's a lot of power in no.
Hmm.
That's probably a whole other avenue we could go on. But if you know what you're about, you know where you want to go, generally speaking. And I just mean like having guardrails of like anything in here is interesting as long as we're on the same road. But if it's a fork in the road to go this way, like, I'm out on that because that is not the trajectory that I have decided that I want to go. I think being able to calibrate and say, okay, if this is a major direction shift, I'm out. But if
Hmm.
it's like just a fractional recalibration, then I think that I have probably said no to some things that could have been net positive had I had the bandwidth to explore them at that time. And so I'm in a position now where I'm looking to, like I said, recalibrate some of my openness to, like, what I call this, like serendipity or opportunity that finds me that I maybe didn't do anything to have it find me.
Hmm.
Um, but in all of that, I think that I have always placed a very high level of energy into pursuing things because I just find it innately interesting to pursue.
Yeah.
In the growth of my career, that has, I think that um, I'm gonna, it could be, I don't remember who the quote is. It's one of the like Silicon Valley, like VC guys, but he's talking about the world will bend itself to your will a surprising amount of the time if you just don't quit.
Hmm.
I believe that because I've lived it. And I'll tell you, like, when we met in 2020, at that time, I was the senior creative producer at Sitka, which for your audience is one of the largest like high performance hunting apparel companies in the country. It's owned by Gore. If you have a Gore-Tex jacket, Gore-Tex. I started shooting photos for them as a freelancer in 2014, and I had written in my journal in 2011 that I would become the creative director at Sitka Gear. Now, I became the director of brand communications, not quite the creative director, but I was danger close.
Yep.
And it turns out after I was there, I was like, actually, now that I see what the creative director here is, I don't want that job. So I share that to say, like, I set myself a course because at the time when I was like, it's funny, man, how your scope and your ability to imagine expands over time as you collect more and more experience. In 2011, I was roasting coffee at West End Coffee Company in Greenville, South Carolina for something like $12 an hour.
Killing it.
Um, Dude, I was like paycheck to paycheck, like poor, like just trying to make it. A couple years previous to that, there's one point I had $83 in my bank account, and I did the math on how long I could live on peanut butter and jelly and milk. That was in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, you know, I kind of know what that feels like. And
Yep.
then to dream out of that place is like a really difficult task, actually, because you're worried about your like immediate survival needs and like, how am I going to pay rent 10 days from now? They're going to throw my ass out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, I want to be creative director at Sitka in my journal, that was like, Sitka was the dopest thing I could imagine because I'd just seen like pictures on the internet, and I met a
Mm-hmm.
dude in the airport back in Arizona on that Knowles course. Actually, that was my first exposure to Sitka, like that it was a thing that existed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's like the craziest thing I could imagine. I never had a creative career. I wasn't even really like, I had a camera, but I wasn't good. Like I had
Mm-hmm.
no business pondering that out there. But it was like, this is insane. My whole career would be made if I could ever achieve this thing. And then I just followed my interests, and it turned out because I had dozens and hundreds of conversations. I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours outside with a camera in my hand, networking, sending emails, like building my career. I went to this agency and I met this person, which connected me to that person that 3 years later introduced me to another person. And it just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the only continuity across everything that I've done since my like actual like professional career, I would say started in like 2013. Um, I just followed my nose, man. Like, this opportunity has come my way. Let me sniff at it for a second, see what's over there. If the air smells good, and I think that it will help me get to maybe where I want to go, let's go.
Yeah.
And just having a willingness to chase it down and not quit, um, was really like, that's the only thing I'm good at. Like, I'm not really that good at a lot. I'm just like, I'm pretty,
Debatable.
or I'm stubborn. I like what I like. I know what I like. It's kind of like, now, okay, take the heart of what I'm saying, not the like pure straight analogy. The Rick Rubin thing of like, I have
This is
I
literally
have
what popped into
taste.
my head.
Like, I don't know how to mix music.
Mm-hmm.
I have developed taste, and other people have come to trust my taste.
Yes.
It's like, I'm not saying that I'm Rick Rubin. Hear me.
Sure.
That dude is a
Sure.
wizard. I am not. But it's this similar kind of vibe of
Mm-hmm.
just like, I think that over here is interesting. I will go. I will experience what is over there. And then I will take all of that learning with me to wherever I will go next.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Building a creative career really is like, it's cultivating a keen sensibility for story, a visual aesthetic if you're a visual creative, like I am, and then an ability to sniff out narrative in a way that will be compelling for other people. Because all that I really do now in the, I just took this new role at UltraView, and I'm kind of like wiping the slate clean. But all that I'm trying to do is uh, earn the trust of people such that they might pay attention to what we're doing. That's it. And I think over a long enough time horizon, with a compelling enough narrative, that I can pull a majority of that addressable market into our brand ecosystem in such a way where we can put the things that we make on display in a compelling enough fashion such that they will exchange their dollars for our widgets. And then because I align myself with companies that actually make good shit, it's like, this is worth your time and energy and your transference of your life force into dollars to give to us, and we give you this product. I think it will enhance your experience within target archery or bow hunting. Like that's kind of the exchange that I'm after.
Mm-hmm.
And really all I'm doing right now is building a crew that can tell a compelling story. Like that's 2025 for me. We're like, wipe the slate clean, totally overhauling the budget, let some people go, brought some new people in. And it's just like, I don't think that just because it's me, I'm not special. People won't pay attention just because it's my stuff that we're doing. One, it's not my stuff. There's a whole team of us.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I think you got to earn people's attention in a 2025 digital environment. Like our brains are pretty cooked on dopamine right now. To get somebody to pay attention with you is like you had to fight against the machine.
Yep.
And then have it be, you got to have something to say, have a sharp opinion, like
Mm-hmm.
pick a fight every now and then. And then one of my favorite sayings is like, if your product sucks, then all your marketing is a lie. And so I sit there with my engineering team who are great. And I'm like, I know that you guys believe this, but I'm just going to reiterate this for my own spirit. Like, I don't like to lie to people. So
Mm-hmm.
please, like, how can I help you make good stuff?
Yeah.
And that's the entire like market economy game that I'm in, is just the attention of people. And
Mm-hmm.
all of that has only, to whatever degree I am responsible for my own success, which is not very much. All of that has only come just because I followed my interests, man.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I love that. And especially to your point of saying no is a significant part of that journey, right? Like set up your bumpers down your bowling lane
Mhm.
and anything within there, if it seems good enough to pursue, go for it. But if it's outside your bumpers, no is probably one of your greatest tools or greatest weapons along that path, I would say, that pursuit.
100%.
This is, man, I I am everything that you're saying about what your aim is with UltraView. I'm seeing over the last few years the things that you have shared that just absolutely, it's hard evidence to everything that you're saying right now that your aim is to do there. It's that you have a stack of proof that this is who you are, that this is your aim, that this is the way that you live. And what comes to mind for me is I've watched you do several unboxing videos,
Mm.
and the way that you unbox items and the way that you review a product is very sharp and honest. And I'm thinking of you unboxing some of your glass.
Mm.
And the way, people talk about Apple, you're so good with your design and even your packaging and all that stuff, which everybody kind of, yeah, we jump on that train, whatever. But the way that you do it is very detail oriented, and it is something that what you're saying, how you get with your engineers, that is an important aspect, right? Where everybody loves to unpack something that's so well curated, just the packaging. Before you even get to the item that you're so excited to get that dopamine rush over, you're getting your dopamine hits from that experience. what I'm curious about is how does that differ, in your opinion, when you're talking brand building or brand launching or brand growth from product to service? Is that something that you feel confident
Mm.
speaking to? And what does that look like? That experience where you go, hey, engineers, I want to make sure we're not lying in our marketing, which means we have to make an absolutely kick ass product. How does that look in terms of service based business?
Mm. So again, I can speak to this through the lens of my own experience. I have a consulting business that I run on the side where I help creators and other brands like build towards whatever goal they have identified, generally within the sphere of influence or spaces that I play in, provided that those engagements are non-competitive with whatever the main thing is for me at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I would say everything. You are the story that you tell, to at least like outwardly. Um, when it comes to physical entities or brands, like your packaging and every touch point that a consumer can have with your organization or company, like all of that is brand building or brand damaging. Um, in a service-based business, you know, I used to sell my experience through the form of advice or like guidance. I know you do some coaching stuff as well. I think that um, you have to create content that puts your competence on display, and how people emotionally feel about how you translate that confidence to the world is how that can impact your brand. Um, because when you are dealing with more feeling based ideas or service products, like like if I have uh, a creative client that is looking to bid work and I'm helping them put together a bid for work, uh, as long as their creative talent is saleable, aka passes muster on, do I think this person's camera work or copywriting or director reel, like, are they good enough to do work for brand X? That's
Mm-hmm.
just like a sensibility thing that if you've worked in the creative space long enough, is just like you can kind of pick up on it and know like you are in this conversation. Uh, this is worth your time and effort, or you need to continue to cultivate your talent. Brands like that are not going to work with people like you, generally speaking, yet.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of snip that out. But when I'm working on bid projects, which is like all of the negotiations that I've ever done condensed into my brain and my formulas and how I think about what is a realistic price for deliverables such as X, Y, and Z. You're confronting human psychology much more than actual math, because you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to talk people into believing in themselves more than they do presently. Usually how that goes.
Right.
And so if I'm working with a photographer who wants to shoot for Nike and they've never shot for Nike before, maybe they've done some spec work, passion projects, they don't have a big portfolio of sports material. It's just like, well, you need to find some white space and go shoot some dope stuff and then put it together in a compelling way. And that's like more on them. And I can guide them in how to present that and make a deck and like network to find the decision maker within the department that's actually going to give them a look. I can teach people all of that.
Right.
Teaching them to believe in themselves is a much more high touch human skill.
Yeah.
And how you or I might present ourselves to someone to instill belief is much more brand building for our offering than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And my opinion on how you do that is that you need to have a high level of understanding about all the kind of like multivariate options of this person that I'm talking to has encountered things like this. Therefore, they are likely thinking down paths that go this way. And so I can steer them where they want to go if I suggest things like these. And then I layer that on top of my own experience, wherein the competence that I know and believe in that is real because I lived it. I'm trying to convince them and instill belief in my client, and it's all just it's relational equity and proving a thesis in real time based on tangible results that either you or another client have lived. And I think that becomes its reputation more than brand in service. And so a lot of the things that, the yarn that you pulled on me earlier in my introduction was very generous, but I think that the thing that really resonates with me and the thing that I say often in the circles that I run in, I tell this joke when I'm talking to people about the importance of reputation within the outdoor industry. Specifically, I'll be having a conversation, and I'll say there's 7 people that work in this space and 2 of us are at this table right now. The point that I'm trying to make is that you are the story that you tell, and the story that you tell is your reputation. And if you damage it, boy, you're in trouble. So think about every move you're going to make. Think about all the mean tweets you want to send out, all the shit you want to talk on the internet. And I say that as somebody that does like to talk some shit from time to time. But it's just like your reputation is everything. And so in a service-based business, your brand is your reputation, your ability to tell a compelling narrative that elicits a response and builds confidence in your client. Like, that's it.
Yeah, I love that. Key breakdown from that for me that I'm gathering, if I could try to sum it up for anybody listening or watching. One, just keep it real. Don't lie.
Yeah.
Right? That's across the board. Obviously, you're taking that into the product base side of things, but this holds true in the service based side of things. If you are offering a service, coaching, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people offering things that they just don't know how to fulfill in the coaching space. And that dishonesty is just going to entirely kill your brand versus if you can target people and be honest and say, hey, I am highly capable up to this level. And there are plenty of levels beyond that I would love to be able to. I'm not there yet. So I would take on the challenge of trying to help someone up there and try to help elevate both of us, but I can't confidently say that I can reach up and have a positive impact with certainty like I can with everybody else that I'm confident in being able to help, because I have this stack of proof. I have this stack of evidence that I've been able to get people there. And the thing that it just shouts to me is the callback to your video about what your caliber says about you. That's not something that just anybody can create. You have to have a level. Like if I were to try to make that video right now, and I like guns, I enjoy them, I am definitely a fan. More so, it's even growing more since becoming a father, to be honest. But that's not something, despite that many hours I've spent learning, researching, paying to go to trainings and things like this, that's not something that I could create. And even if I did try to create it, I could not create it to the level that you created it. Like you're saying, to be able to have the foresight and say, okay, an individual that's at this square on the game board of whatever this genre of thing is, they're right here, which means they have these options. And if they go down this path, then what's going to happen is they're going to encounter this. If they go down next path, they are sure to encounter this. That's something that you can only do if you have that level of skill set, even in the world of chat GPT, AI, and all this stuff, because even when you try to deliver, if I try to deliver the same thing, I do not have the stack of evidence that you have with your lifetime of experience up to that level. So it's just going to not read the same. People are going to see the bullshit meter going off for them when I'm trying to deliver the exact same message.
Yep. Yeah, man.
That's right.
Competence is the only game in town, and
Yeah,
faking the funk is a short-term strategy.
agreed.
Yeah.
Completely agreed. I was having this chat the other day. I was on set chatting with this guy, just been in the industry, bought a studio in November. They moved after 15 years at a different studio,
Hmm.
and they do photography, and he was kind of chatting about the challenges of it in the world where everybody is giving away information online for free. So how are we to compete in this space? And I was telling him, I love that. I love that all this wonderful, useful information is being given away for free online, and I aim to do the same. And the reason I love it is because I'm in this for the long run. If I was a short-term player, then I wouldn't love it, because now everybody has access and they can see, copy, get a quick little business hit, and that's that. But you can't copy to a high level of people who iterate. Like somebody trying to compete with you when they're like, "Oh yeah, I love hunting, and capital H hunting is my jam." And like they're just bullshitting. That may work for a very short period of time, but like you said, competency is king. That's going to be on display no matter how many things you try to copy, because you just can't copy a high level of competency. So if you're in it for the long run, I love the free market of information and everything like that, because I am committed to continual growth. The pursuit of this, of progress, as you say, is a trajectory. It's not a destination.
Yeah, I think there's some strategic implications in this conversation too, which might be worth calling out. If and this is advocating for my own kind of way of thinking about this that we've discussed. If you follow your own interests, which are going to be like not all like tied neatly together, so
Mhm.
it's like for me, I love hunting. Um, I like really nice Leica cameras. I work with active duty special operations guys, and I kind of have a fascination with like projectile sports. So it's like some of those are pretty like they stack on top of each other, pretty neat. But the Venn diagram of like all those things is kind of clunky.
Mhm.
But if I lean into all of them, the odds that there is another person who has all of my same interests are super low, like super low. So
Mhm.
really, like if this is a story that I used to tell with some of my photography clients is you you want to be like the only person that's doing what you're doing, really. And there used to be a guy that I don't know if he's still doing it. This is like a 10-year-old anecdote, but he was like a dessert and pastry photographer in Singapore. This is like early days of Instagram.
Yeah.
And it was like if you had now Singapore, like financial district, like that side of the world, like there's a ton of money over there.
Mhm.
Really big cities, right? High-end restaurants, like the market for what he wanted to do is totally there. If you own a high-end restaurant in Singapore and you need photography for your website, for your menu, for your Instagram, there's only one person to call.
Yeah.
That guy carved out his niche based on like a super narrow, like I take cupcake pictures over here in Singapore.
Right.
Like there was nobody competing for that space. He just
Right.
followed his own interests because that's not a business idea that you come up with. You're like, oh yeah, I'm onto something here. I'm gonna go take, you know, cheesecake photos in Singapore.
Right.
There's money to be made over there. There's no way that that's how that happened. How
Yeah.
it happened is like I live here. I'm gonna move to the city because my clients are in the city, but I know how to do lighting for semi-porous edible objects, and I can become the best in the world at that. And it's
Right.
like, dude,
Right.
no one's competing with him. So if
Yeah.
you have like my interest that I just lined out, like there's nobody else competing with me.
Yeah.
And so I'm just over here willy-nilly doing my own stuff and like follow along if you want. And if you don't, totally cool. There's the whole internet of people for you to look at, and it doesn't have to be me.
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
love
You just follow your interests.
I absolutely love it. And that's so true. I mean, I hear people talk about Joe Rogan, the top of the podcast world, everybody, targets him and everything. And they're just like, he's so successful because he has these wildly varying interests and they all overlap. And so he pulls from each of these communities and everything. But realistically, I think it's a prime example of what you're saying is he just leans in. It wasn't a strategy play from him. He was just like, these are the things that I'm interested in. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. And that's where we are in this conversation. And then later on, people start to connect those dots. But it's just him being him, the same way you're saying.
Yeah.
Just be you. Pursue within your bumpers in the pursuit that you're after. Bounce around to the things that you think have the biggest calling for you. That's really just pulling at your heartstrings or whatever it is, your passions.
Yeah. It's got to be fun just because you like it. If you're after something because your aim is to make money, you've bastardized the thing from the jump. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not like completely against that. Like I do things solely for the intent of making money. But when we're talking about like aligning the trajectory of your life, if it's only about money, that's kind of shallow and you can exist there for quite a long time, I think. But ultimately, for me, the way that I see the world, which I don't hold anybody else to that standard, but for me, it's like, that's a bad game. I don't want to do that. And so I'm just gonna, follow my interests, see where they go, and then, you know, some of the old things that are cliche about, follow your passion, never work a day in your life. That's bullshit, by the way. But as a directive, like there is some truth in there.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're wired a certain way, following your passions, it will keep you in the game longer.
Yeah.
Because like, I'll tell you, what is today? Today is January
24.
24. Okay, so last week, Friday the 24th, last week, I had 5 different people come into town for interviews or new teammates for like on-site intensives. I had them all stay at my house so that we could do more time in the game, like late night post-dinner conversations about, 2025 business strategy for all the stuff that we're trying to do. I closed my computer on Friday, a week ago, Friday night at like 9:15 p.m. And I had those guys come in on Sunday morning. I just like did quick math because like I haven't done this in a while. I did quick math. I was like, I was on talking about business for 91 hours since Sunday. And it's just like, one, that's heinous. And I do not advocate for like grind and hustle culture. I hate that. But it was like, most of it was fun. It's a lot of challenge. I was very tired, but because it's something that I'm interested in, I can find the stamina. Now, you can't do that every week for months on end. That's a bad plan. But at times, dedicated effort, brute force the machine, like get in there, move the weight, like let's go. You can find that gear if it's for something that you just intrinsically enjoy, and most importantly, you're working with people that you like.
Yeah. Agreed. And that, like you're saying, that threshold, when you love it, the threshold is just much higher. You can endure so much more pain, so much more struggle, so much more challenge when it's something that you love. It's like, this sucks, but I think about this all the time. I hated the office job. Right out of college, I went and worked in finance, had an office job. And even on my worst days as this self-employed guy, I'm like, I'll take this every day over that office job. That was miserable to me. And so the passions and the pursuits, your threshold is just so much higher there. I'm very curious before I shift gears because I want to chat to you a bit about Big Sky Bravery. But before we do, what are some key for branding and brand building and brand growth for the people who are like, I don't even know what branding is. How is branding different from marketing and blah, 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 blah. But I just want to do this thing. I have a thing. I have this idea. I want to pursue it, whatever it is. What are just key, simple, non-negotiable do's and don'ts that you're like, no matter what it is, what you do, where you're at, if you want to be successful, this is a must do. And then this is a must avoid.
Everything is a story that you tell. if you lie and present yourself as something that you're not to try to get to a specific end, the whole thing is a sham. Don't do that. Like the whole fake it till you make it thing, I think is a super bad strategy. Uh,
Yeah.
because the world, everybody's like BS filter is pretty tuned in now. Like we're just, our brains are onslaught with material all day long, and people just suss it out. Like that feels fake and I don't like it. So if you're trying to present yourself, and there's a difference between like, I'm trying to convey ambition and I'm on this trajectory and I have these goals and I'm working towards it. That is different than I've already done it when you've actually done jack shit. And it's like, don't lie about your story, because as soon as you start doing that, everything that you build on top of it is a fabrication. And at one time, that'll all unwind.
Yeah.
And you see it a lot, right? Like people that build personal brand, it's just like that whole thing wasn't true actually. And then it's like you're not, you don't go back to zero. You go
Yeah.
back to negative social sentiment and like minus trust, not just like
Yeah.
zero trust, like you're in the hole actually. So don't fabricate anything about your story. Do share your story exactly where you are right now, where you want to go, speak it into existence. Day one, starting now. This is what I want to do. I also am buying myself the freedom to course correct along the way, because I am a human being and I will learn and grow and my desires will change over the course of this trajectory. But telling your story, the idea of like build in public, I'm super romantic about.
Yeah.
I'm doing it right now with the UV brand. I'm doing some of
Yeah.
that with my personal brand. Um, and so those just like super quick flinch reactions. Don't lie about your story, but do tell your story in an authentic way live on the internet. If you have any personal ambition to do like anything, and personal brand has like a whole kind of like aura around it, and some people love it and some people think it's not great. Well, all that I mean is like if you have something interesting to say, people can judge for themselves if they listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Having an audience is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so just
Yeah.
tell your story live on the internet, build it in public, don't lie about it, do it for long enough, keep going. That's the way to do it.
I love it. I think that's very sound advice. I will be taking that into thorough account for myself. Also for my nephew who just launched his little podcast that I'm pretty pumped for him to be
Oh,
doing.
nice.
Yeah. So Big Sky Bravery. Before we get into this,
Hmm.
I have you captivated me time and time again on Instagram with your posts about men of a certain culture.
Hmm.
And there's a few reasons this was captivating to me. For one, I kind of entered into this pursuit, this curiosity sometime last year where actually a little over a year ago, where I was fascinated with this question of what makes warriors so like elite warriors so unanimously revered. And when I say that, I mean not just in US of A, not just in this modern era. I mean across history, across nations, across cultures, in a world where there's Eastern and Western medicine, Eastern and Western philosophy, and all these different range of understanding of life. It seemed to me that no matter when in history or where in history, the elite warriors are always revered. And so the question to me was like, why is that? It's not just because of their capabilities. So I went down this rabbit hole and I start pursuing, and this is, a year and a half ago, or whatever. So I'm online and I'm looking, and I come across Sean Ryan show. And I love Sean Ryan show. Sean Ryan himself, he reminds me of one of my best friends from childhood so vividly, which is obviously like a subjective connection there. But the people that he had on, especially in his early days, which were all, tier one operators, I was like watching and consuming, not just because it is fascinating, but I'm trying to find the answer to this question. And ultimately, what I landed on after watching the movie Troy again with Achilles and how he's this elite warrior is there's a significant difference from an elite soldier and an elite warrior. And the difference that I've come to understand is that a soldier is following orders. No matter how skilled they are at their crafts and everything like that, they're not really driving their life by their own accord, by their own set of morals and ethics. Whereas a warrior like Troy, like Achilles, it's not because the king said to do this. It's because I have this moral code that I am bound to, that I am sticking to no matter what, no matter who stands in front of me. That's what I've gathered so far, the significant difference between an elite soldier and an elite warrior. And that is something that I think is very respectable across culture, anywhere where you go, okay, I admire someone who has a code, but I even more so admire someone who follows and lives by their code. And on top of that, expertise in anything is admirable. So they have this beautiful bundle of things. You have spent a good amount of time with, I'm assuming a lot of these guys are tier one, even tier two operators, and pretty good at slinging nuggets among many other things. And I'm curious how you even became involved with Big Sky Bravery, but also what are the themes that you're seeing firsthand when you're around and working alongside and spending time with these guys?
Yeah. So I'm going to couch this section of the podcast. I was never in the military.
Mm-hmm.
I do not pretend to be a part of the special operations community. I don't speak for any of those guys. And so everything that I can say about this is from my perspective as a civilian.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, little background on what Big Sky Bravery is, and then we'll kind of circle back. Big Sky Bravery is a nonprofit based in Bozeman, Montana, where I used to live until recently, that serves active duty special operations guys and gals with post-deployment decompression trips. And so it is unique in that in the United States, there are some approaching 50,000 veterans organizations. There are only a handful of organizations that serve active duty special operations personnel. The reason for that is because they're still active, and some of these people are doing things that are clandestine in nature, and maybe you don't get their real names. You certainly don't learn a lot about what they do for work, but they are like red-blooded patriots that have a hard job, and that job tends to hang around. And the founder, his brother, came out of Ranger Regiment, and I think he had something like 15 plus deployments over a 20-year career. And he saw his brother-in-law, excuse me, coming home like less and less of himself over the course of time. And he was like, there needs to be an organization that is helping you now, not after you retire, because this trajectory is not great. And so the long and short of it is Big Sky Bravery brings out active duty special operators from on post deployment decompression trips to come skiing, snowmobiling, go hike into the mountains, trout fish like way the heck up in the hills, and just like get some fresh air. And most of the volunteers are civilians. And the point is that though the American public will never know what you do for this country, those of us that volunteer, we are appreciative and will take time off of work to come and hang out with you and treat you like a normal dude, not like you're some hero and shake your hand in the airport, because those guys generally hate that. It's just like, you're a normal dude, you got a wife and kids, maybe like you do a hard job. Why don't you just like come hang with us in the mountains and have a good time? If you want to talk about work to the degree that you can, we will listen to you and provide our experience. If you don't want to say a single word about work, that's fantastic too. Like, maybe we'll be friends, maybe we won't be friends, but I fucking care about you, man. And I think that like this is just worth my time to do. So like, come out here and have a hang. That's the setup. That's what we do at BSB. How I got into it, I had some friends that did it. My fiance used to work there. And so I've been volunteering for about 2.5 years. I'm actually going on another trip here a month from today, actually, end of February. I'll be back out there hanging out with some guys. Um, it's a it meets a need, man. Like, um, these guys, like, they're normal dudes. Like, I think that so much of some of what you were saying about, like, why do people associate with stories, and why do they aspire or revere guys like this? Um, and I want to put a pin in this too. The United States of America has a lot of female special operators too. That is not widely discussed. BSB also does female programs. So it's not just guys. I'm just saying guys because I obviously work with guys.
Yeah.
Um, it's like a hero's journey is baked into your DNA as a storytelling species. Humans, we're very like vocal and communicative. And if you if you are a standard run-of-the-mill civilian and you've seen movies and that's as close as you can get to imagining what these people do, it's so beyond your own personal realm of experience that it can be, if you're wired a certain way, like kind of endearing and like, oh my gosh, that's fantastical. And these dudes are heroes. And like, they're awesome. I just want to rub elbows because it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
There's some truth to that. I think that BSB tries to suss out people that feel that way, and they are generally not invited to partake as volunteers in that organization, because those guys don't need that.
Yeah.
They get that in the airport. They get it at the grocery store. I think that all the guys that I have known, and again, I'm not speaking for BSB as an organization. I'm not speaking for any other volunteer. I'm not speaking for the board of BSB. I'm only speaking for myself.
Hmm.
The guys that I have met uh, through my work with that organization, uh, they're normal dudes that have a hard job. Um, they deploy all the time. I think they're going to be doing more stuff like the current administration. Like, I mean, you heard Trump the other day being like, we're sending the boys to Mexico. Maybe that'd be interesting if we did. Like, I don't have any knowledge. Those dudes keep really good secrets, but it's just like those dudes are out there doing it.
Hmm.
Um, they need a place to come and get rest because you're switched on
Yeah.
all the time, and oftentimes like very dangerous environments. And you need a place where you can just go and like hang with the boys and like sit around a campfire and just like take a beat, man. Like,
Yeah.
if you go on the BSB website and you read some of the testimonials, which I would encourage you to do, um, a lot of the guys are like, I've been doing this for 15 years. Most of the guys that come out are pretty senior. It's
Hmm.
all the organizations that send guys and gals out, and I have to be a little bit cagey. I can't talk about like which places people come from, what organizations or units they're from.
Yep.
Um, they're they're freaking in the game, man. And it's
Yeah.
like having a place to come where I don't need you to come and tell me your war stories.
Yeah.
I just like, how are you as a man? Like, how are
Yeah.
you doing? How's your marriage? Like, how can we help you? Is there anything that we can do for you as volunteers to just like be homies, keep up with you, send you a text when you're out there of just like, hey, I thought about you today. I don't
Hmm.
I don't need to know where in the world you are. You won't tell me anyways, but like, I thought about you today. I'm grateful for you. If there's anything that we can do for you stateside, like, let me know, you know, like, it's
Yeah.
a, it's just, it's a gratitude is kind of like the core mission. And then, you know, when you are out here with us, you can take a breath, like get some sleep, um, and you just have some fresh air. I do winter programs, which is generally skiing and snowmobiling, in the mountains of Montana. And it's just a reset, man. You'll hear all those guys talk about, like, I didn't know that Americans cared about us, which I think it makes a lot of sense, because these are guys that do things that will never be in the news. If they are in the news, something has gone real wrong.
Mhm.
And my one man's perspective is those guys tend to be really appreciative of just coming to the realization that, like, that while I may not agree or like that I'm gone as much as I'm gone, like, there are Americans that know that I exist, that care about me and my family and the guys in my unit. And they appreciate what I do, and they're personally grateful for me, which is very humbling. Those guys deflect any type of, they don't want special treatment. They don't want to hear thank you. It's very like duty and service oriented, which I think goes back into your like kind of warrior persona. There is something attractive to the current culture of humanity that still innately appreciates men who are driven by code, which is like what you're talking about, um, and guys that are doing something that needs done. And like uh, I'm of the belief that uh, we have not grown to a place, as at a species level where we can all be friends. I don't think that is real. That will never happen. I think that evil exists. I'm a person of faith. I think that like spiritual realms are super real. I think that evil is very real and very active. And there are people that need to go into the dark of night and deal with that on behalf of people like me and people like you. I am very privileged to have met a handful of those guys that do that. And to me, every time I do one of the trips with these guys, um, dude, I get way more out of it than I feel like I give them. And there's a part of me that feels really bad about that. I try to give them anything I can give them, just like parts of my story. Um, a lot of those guys to stay in the game are heavy, like, they're banged up. They've been through uh, the VA system, and I'm not here to disparage or talk shit about something that I don't have any personal experience with, but it's like it's not always great. Sometimes it's fine,
Yeah.
but it's like, popping pills to stay in the game. Substance addiction is not as common as some of the military podcasts I think might lead you to believe, but is absolutely a thing that those guys encounter at times. And it's just like that sense of duty, like those dudes will sacrifice everything. Like I will, biblical, I will lay down my life for my friends. Like those
Yeah.
dudes embody that. And I think there's a fascination innate in men specifically with, I wonder if I have the capacity to be that way.
Yeah.
Um, and the exposure to guys that do that every day is extremely humbling. Um,
Yeah.
and I, you know, talk to those guys, and we we do the like dark humor and send memes that are pretty heinous, but it's
Yeah.
just like those guys are looking for community the same way that I, met my guys at Clemson 15 years ago to have community and hunting. They're like their brothers are there. Like that's their lifeblood, man, and they will spill it out for them.
Yeah.
And they have a belief and a mission that I think, just like anybody in life that is um, trying to keep life balanced and on target, that belief and mission comes and goes, it wanes. Um, and bringing them out, treating them like normal dudes, like it's kind of weird, man. I think that one, like their how it worked, like their commands will select you should go out here and you
Hmm.
should do this thing based on guys that we've sent in the past and the experiences that they stories that they have come back to the unit with. Like, I think my buddy needs to go.
Yeah.
And they show up and they're usually their hackles are up, their guard is up. They're like, I don't need special treatment. I don't really need to be here. Actually, like I'm fine.
Yeah.
Because that's just the mental framework that those guys tend to exist in. And then, you show up and you're like, fuck yeah, dude, you're not special. You're a special operator, but that's just your job. And it's just like the guard comes down and they're like, oh, they're not going to treat me like I'm special. It's just like,
Yeah.
because they don't think they're special.
Hmm.
It's just like, you're just a dude with a hard job and
Yeah.
somebody's got to do it. And turns out right now in this moment and this season of life, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And while we will never know what it is that you're doing, I'm grateful for you. We spend a week outside in the fresh air in the cold. We dig out our snowmobiles and we bury them together, and we just work hard. And we do like recreation. Like somebody else would call it like recreation therapy. I think
Hmm.
we would just call it just like you're just fucking around with the boys outside and
Yeah.
in the snow and the cold.
Yeah.
And it's just fun, man. Like you just have fun. You just be
Hmm.
a dude. And you like I have made like fantastic relationships with some of these guys. Um, like one of the guys that I've met through that organization will be a groomsman in my wedding. And
Love
it's
that.
it's like the reason that is because you're exposed to like you can speed run the relationship in those environments, and you can
Hmm.
kind of like go to some pretty serious places if you're willing to be vulnerable. um and I don't think I'm a good volunteer in whatever that means in this capacity, but like I have some stuff that I have lived through that if I am willing to share invites people to listen. And so oftentimes, like if I get in conversations with a guy after a full day of skiing and we're in the hot tub and just talking about life, and guys like, yeah, like I'm pretty banged up and I'm like trying to get off pills, or I struggled with pills in the past. Like I can tell in my story about being an opiate addict. And
Hmm.
it's like, man, I have some experience with that. Here's my story. This is what I've learned. Um, I've lived through some like pretty dark stuff that like we haven't talked about here, that when and if it's appropriate, I'll share some of that story. And it's like, um, you know, I know what the slide on a Glock tastes like. And I can tell them like, I know what it's like to want to die.
Yeah.
Because I've lived through things I just didn't know how to deal with. And I wanted to take the off ramp, man. Like I want to be out.
Yeah.
And I don't share those stories out of pity. I share them because like I've been to the brink for my own circumstances, which are way different than anything that those guys have experienced. I'm not trying to relate and say like I know who you are and what you're about and the struggles that you deal with. I just try to say like in my own way, perhaps I have arrived at a perhaps similar spot in life. And here's what I learned from being there. Here's how I transcended that experience. And this is what I've done now. Um, and it's like raw uh brotherhood that is it's only an invitation.
Yeah.
If those guys are not like they don't want to reciprocate, that's totally fine because I can't I don't want you to be somewhere if you don't need to be there.
Yeah.
But like I can offer you an olive branch and say like here's my life, here's my experience, this is what I have learned. Like interesting, and just let them talk. And it's like a judgment-free zone, man. Like, those guys can share stuff with us that they can't share with other people, if they so choose.
Right.
Not everybody does, you know. Some guys are like, hell yeah, it's a hard job, but I love it. And this
Yeah.
is cool on day 3 now that I'm out here. And I think that you guys aren't gonna like blow smoke up my butt. Like, it's cool that you guys care enough to do this. So thank you. And
Yeah.
sometimes like that's all that they want out of it, and that's all they need. And that's fantastic. And then
Yeah.
other times it's like, we're gonna go the full 9 yards right now and talk about some like dark days. And if there's any way that I can help you with my human experience, dude, I'll pour myself out for you.
Yeah.
It has meant a lot to me, to be able to interact with those guys, in the way that I have, to keep up with them, to build relationship. And it's like I try to remember, um, and this just remember that they exist, man. Like I wear I wear a bracelet on my wrist, kill bad dudes.
Yeah.
um, which is kind of like a hoorah, like manly thing, right? One of my buddies that's retired special operator has this brand, and actually met him outside of the program. But I wear this bracelet not because it's like a cool slogan and it's kind of like a like fuck yeah, like this is cool.
Yeah.
I wear it because it reminds me every single day that there are guys that do this. Um, because like political persuasions aside, like this happens
Yeah.
every single day, and I'm of the opinion that it needs done.
Hmm.
And that can be a debate for the annals of time, and standing in front of the pearly gates, and that's not my call to make. But like what I've seen enough of the world, I've traveled to some places, I have enough stories. I'm like, yeah, dude, there's some people who need their lives snuffed out, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that I have been privileged to meet some guys that'll go and do that job.
Yeah.
And it's not a I'm not better for knowing them. I'm certainly not special for being able to do that. I just like I give my time and I give my story if it feels appropriate, in a wild place in Montana that's conducive to deep conversation, should that be the avenue that we end up going down. And man, like I said, I get more out of it than I think they do, which makes me feel guilty in a way, um, because it's just perspective, man. Like I I know what I believe about the state of the world because I have just like small fractional little touch points with guys that have lived an entirely different life than me. And it gives me just a little lens into their world, how they exist, how they think about community, how they do relationship. What have you learned from being deployed most of the time for the last 15 years about how to maintain good communication with your wife while you're gone?
Mm.
And there's something in there for me that I could learn and bring back to my family.
Right.
And then vice versa. Like a lot of those guys love hunting because it's like some of the same reasons that I have talked about loving hunting. It's like it's a way to do like a very traditionally manly thing in a way that uh, doesn't you're not engaged, you're not a target.
Hmm.
It's like you're out there in a wild place with a completely different mission, but it's still like very task focused. Um, but they're able to kind of commune with a wild place where, like, quite honestly, like where they're not getting shot at or blown up.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's kind of like just like a long ramble about, man, those I love those boys, man. And like like I said, I'm going back out in a month to do another trip. It means a lot to me personally. Um, and I'm so glad that that organization exists. Um, and on the off chance that somebody that is active in one of these communities listens to this and knows that this is a thing or has a buddy that has been out, um, I would encourage you, like, run it up your chain of command, float the idea to some people, like we can connect dots. And if you're a guy that's like, yeah, I went to the BSB website, that seems interesting, like that information is out there. Please seek that organization out. There are Americans that care about you and want to support what you're doing. And if we can be a help in any way, like we're about it.
I love that. Man, that's thank you for the breakdown, first of all, because that I was on the website. I was trying to do some digging and fittingly so there's information, but there's also a sense of mystery, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I kind of wanted to unpack that a little bit with you. And I think, man, I don't feel like right now is the time for me to get into my perspective around our servicemen and women and my journey and my relationship with that. But to summarize it, maybe in another visit, I'll unpack this more, the
Mm.
evolution of this for me. So my parents met in the army. They were both in the army, both sides of my family, military service members. And early on for me, it was seeming like my route was like, yeah, I wanted to do that, right? Tier
Mm.
one, I didn't know anything about it, but to me, I just thought, man, snipers are, like the coolest thing ever. And so, that route. And then fast forward through college and everything, and I start questioning a lot of things around the government.
Mm.
And it never led me to dislike servicemen and women. It led me to dislike how they are used
Mm.
in a lot of ways. And so yeah, it's been a relationship. And I've also, to clarify, I'd never served. I've never been in the military, never took the oath, never signed a dotted line. And there's just this relationship that I had going through with like, man, I don't love how our military has been used in a lot of different instances. And I think a lot more of that is coming to light now in our generation of, GWAT and everything like that. Makes it a bit more painful to see as well. But there's never been a disconnection for me as far as it comes to the people actually serving, the
Mm.
individuals who
Yeah.
are living and being in these roles and taking on the jobs. Because while it is fetishized so much, kill bad dudes as it lives on your wrist is something that is fetishized so much. And even though I agree with you, there is evil out in the world and it needs serving. Otherwise, they're going to do the serving, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's so fetishized without giving the proper amount of attention to what it does to people who are doing the job mentally, spiritually, even. And even in that fantasy world where, the Hollywood and all this stuff makes it seem so epic and everything, it's like they don't really capture the darkest experiences that well to what a lot of these people have to endure, have to deal with. And even more so with all the attention and everything on these people and the amazing job that they do, there's not much in way of psychological recovery that's there for them. And like your own experience where you were like outside, being in nature, sinking myself, getting closer to the roots of Mother Nature was so healing for you in those 88-day journeys. And then the hunting days and hunting trips that followed that. I think this is a fascinating, in 50,000 plus, you said, organizations that serve military men and women, this being one of the only ones that serve active duty special operators. I think this is so important because, man, I cannot imagine the weight that even when you love the job, even when you so deeply believe in the work that you're doing, there's still a toll when you're talking about the exchange of human life, right?
Mm.
I can't imagine what that's like to try to process that quickly, where it's like a switch. Hey, you're off, you're rotating out and now you're back home and now it's just back to normal civilized life and whatever it is. Or if you're still active, like, yeah, you're still civilized life, even though you're active, but now you're back stateside. I can't imagine trying to just be able to hit a switch like that when you've spent half a year or more every day, sometimes 6 nights, 7 nights in a row, mission after mission after mission, and be expected to just switch it off and be like, my baseline is dropped again. Now everything's fine without some sort of. I think of this is how I would summarize it. I think of what Big Sky Bravery is doing as a ceremony, a ceremonious transition of, hey, we are honoring everything that you have continually done and continue to do. But we also have, let us live as this transition moment before you have to go back to one way of life or another way of life. This is the time, whatever it shows up like, as you mentioned, sometimes it might show up as long conversations where we're opening up. Other times it doesn't show up in that way. It just shows up in just being outside, just being out there, playing around, having fun in nature. And I imagine, because we all have different circumstances for where we will hit a switch of recovery, of healing, of acceptance, of openness, of opening ourselves up to vulnerability. I imagine that on some of these trips, yeah, maybe it's day 3 where a person has that experience. I imagine some of them don't even have that hit until day 12 when they left 5-6 days ago, and then it just clicks for them where they're like, oh, I can process this in a different way, and it's still going to serve them. So that's what I imagine. I'm going to stay hopeful to that. I'm an optimistic guy. But either way, it's just an amazing, I think that's an amazing organization, the service that it is providing, because as far as I know, there isn't something like that that serves people in that transition point to say, hey, let's get you a good bit of healing time, a good bit of reset time, rather than just, hey, you're back, welcome back, you're in it.
Yeah, I mean it meets a real need, man. I can't pretend to know other than what that's like, other than what I have been told by the guys that I have met and what I have seen them go through, bits of their life that they have shared with me. I will never know.
Yeah.
But I trust them when they tell me that the work that that organization is doing is good and is needed. Um, and those guys give up a lot, man.
Yeah.
And I do like it has to be, it's difficult for all the reasons that you might speculate that it's difficult. And then it's way more difficult for all the things that guys like you and us will never know.
Yeah.
But I think that for anybody listening, BSB is man, it's a great organization serving a very niche community that gets used heavily. And the mission of BSB is to serve those guys and to just say thank you for everything that you do for us as Americans, that we will never be privy to. And so I'm humbled and glad to be a part. Anybody listening that wants to learn more, I think it's bigskybravery.org. It's a nonprofit. Kick the tires on it. Cruise around the website. Um, it's I'm glad that it exists. I'm humbled always to be a part of it, and it's a very it has been something that has come into my life in recent years, that I was not really looking for or expected. I have a similar story to you. Like, I have military service in my family, and it was what I wanted to do. And then that was the only plan for me. If I wasn't going to be an athlete, I was going to join the military after college, because my recruiter in high school was like, "Oh, you have a scholarship. Like, we're going to need officers. Like, this war is not going to end anytime soon. Like, go to school, join up after." And then I've got a 16-inch titanium rod in my leg, and I'm medically ineligible for service. And so that was like, that contributed to my spiral that we talked about earlier. Is like, that was my only backup plan. And then that was also gone. And so it's a way for me to like quite honestly, selfishly. It's a way for me to be involved and give back in a way that is meaningful to me. Um, and I'll tell you, the guy that gave me this bracelet, we were in Alaska together in the summer of 2018, and I had never told anybody that like I felt like less of a man because I hadn't served. I'd like never voiced that to anybody, but it was something that I thought about a lot, which is a little
Yeah.
bit like I kind of hate that I used to feel that way now, but that's the truth of how I felt. It's a little bit like self-flagellating.
Yeah.
Um, just like I felt a call to duty that I was unable to answer.
Yeah.
And I was with this guy in Alaska. Um, I won't mention his name, but um, I was in a very not healthy period of life, kind of like tumultuous in my first marriage, and we were in Alaska together doing some work, and we got super deep. Like we killed a handle of Jameson together in a single night.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I was like, I'm gonna tell this guy what I feel about this. And I
Yeah.
kind of gave him this like bitch ass sob story about how I feel bad that I was never able to do this.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I couldn't have said it then, but I was almost like inviting him to hit me. Like the audacity of me telling this guy who went and did the damn thing, like, I feel bad because I couldn't.
Yeah.
He was so kind to me, man. He just kind of like let me do it. And then, I mean, I was like fantastically drunk,
Sure.
but I meant everything that I was saying. And I wasn't so drunk that I don't remember what I was saying. And I have very vivid memories of this. And he was like, you need to let that go, man. That was not your path. And you just need to go on living your life because that life wasn't for you. And it's not like profound, but I think because it was from a dude that went and lived it, who has seen all the stuff that I will never see, that I understands things that I will never understand. It landed on me in a way that like set me free from a life that I couldn't possibly have lived.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of guys have an idea, especially guys our age. I'm only a couple years older than you. That's like, you know, I graduated high school in '05. Um, so, shit was popping in '05.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I had buddies join up after high school that were dead before I finished college. And there was a part of me that was like, that should have been me. Like I should have gone. I shouldn't have listened to my recruiter. I should have said like, screw soccer. I'm joining because I felt the call to do it, which I think it's not uniquely an American male trait, but so much of the history of our country, the parts of it that I tend to resonate with, there is a duty that is distinctly American that I think we should be proud of as a country. And I didn't do it and I felt bad about it. And I had this guy tell me, like, you need to just get over it, man, because
Yeah.
your life laid out the way that it did. And that wasn't for you. And so you need to like get on with whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing because it wasn't that.
Yeah.
So like let yourself off the hook, which is stupid way to think. Don't think that. And just because it was him, it like took the monkey off my back.
Yeah.
Um, and it meant a lot to me that he took the time to listen to that, which I'm sure like in his perspective was like, this kid has no idea what he's talking about. And then he delivered me a kindness.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, like it was when I started to learn more about BSB, I was like, this is it. This is the thing that I can do
Yeah.
because I've lived the life that I have lived. Maybe that will be useful in some way
Yeah.
two guys that are still in the fight, doing the thing.
Yeah.
Um, and whether or not it's actually useful is for them to decide. Like if I'm
Yeah.
willing to be vulnerable, give of my time, energy, and story, like whether or not it's useful, that's for them to decide.
Yeah.
Which was really like freeing for me. And it is a way for me to serve my country sounds dramatic, but serve individuals that serve our country,
Yeah.
uh, that I have found a lot of meaning in, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
I love that. Have you shared this story and the impact that he's had with you? Have you shared that with him?
Yeah, yeah. He's actually a bow hunter now. And I actually wrote him a note like a couple of weeks ago. I sent him some stuff. And I was like, I know I've told you this before, but that conversation that night, drinking that Jameson, man, that really changed my life. So like he knows.
Yeah.
I'll actually
Good.
see him. I'll see him again in a couple of weeks. But yeah, man, it's just interesting how life plays out.
For
Uh,
sure.
it's
Oh man, what a beautiful.
endlessly fascinating, man.
True. True, true, true. And there's so much more that I want to get into, which will be for another episode. We'll wind this down here and get on with our days. But one of the things that I wanted to get into, which I think if you'll sit down again, I would love for you to map out your recent hunting success, your successful
Mm,
harvest, which
yeah.
even as you wrote it on the post is it's elegant, it's beautiful, it's visceral, even just reading it.
Mm,
But that's something that I do want to get into, but I don't want to cut it short. So we'll save it for another time, I think.
yeah,
But
man.
man, this has been so damn. I'm so glad you honored me with this time. And even if nobody on the planet hears this, I feel very impacted from this time. So thank you for that first, Craig. And before we get to what I would love to give you a moment to just send your message to the world. Like, if there's one thing that I can get out to everybody out there, or all of this specific group of people, whatever that may be, a message that's important to you, I want to get to that. But before we do, where can people best support you? You already mentioned bigskybravery.org for one, if people want to go there, or you can Google it. It's pretty easy to find. Where's the best place people can go to support you, your future endeavors, and what is it that to follow that up, where you give your little handles here or websites or whatever it may be? What is it that you want to say to the world that if you can get this message across, is just going to make the world so much better?
Man, um, I don't pretend to know what I'm doing, man. I'm just out here one day at a time. Um, I don't I don't feel like I have a whole lot that's impactful to say. I'm just willing to share my story because I've had people share their story with me and found it useful. And so I have just made an agreement with myself that if I have opportunities to share, then I'm willing to do that. And there are, there's levels to that. Like there are things that we didn't cover here that, parts of my story I'm comfortable sharing, other parts I don't talk about publicly yet. Maybe one day I will, but um, that core thesis of like, you know, progress is a trajectory, it's not a destination. Like submit yourself to that process. If you're, we've talked about some of the like pitfalls and black holes that life can bring. Like if you're in one now, there are people that understand. And if you are willing to ask for help, help will find you, has been um, it's been my story. I certainly could not have, I wouldn't be alive, honestly, if I didn't have help.
Yeah.
Sometimes that help has been harder to find than other times, but you have to start. I think that the message that I would say is like, life is worth living, even if it looks super bleak right now. Um, you know, It can be fun. It can be interesting. You can make new friends. You can totally change your circumstances. You can, with help, dig out of any hole that you're in. Um, and if you are willing to just put one foot in front of the other, you can see that life is beautiful, and there are second chances for people that need them. There are sunrises coming for people that think that they might not want to see another one. I would encourage you see the next one and then see how that goes, and then maybe see the next one after that. Um, you know, I spend a lot of my time and energy now in the creative field that I'm in, trying to tell compelling stories, just live the life that I think is fun, and help people along the way, whether that's developing creative professionals in some of the other material that I do, or just work in an industry that I just personally find to be satisfying and fun. Any of the stuff that I do with BSB that is tends to be of a more substantive and like human nature. Um, I don't pretend to have any answers, man. I really don't. I am still working through so many things personally myself, just trying to become a better man, a better husband, a better leader in my department at work, a better provider of opportunity for people that are earlier in their journey that I interact with. Like, how can I be a steward of my own story and shepherd people into, the next chapter of their own lives? I've just made an agreement with myself to be open to sharing my learning, without expectation. And if people find that helpful, then that is a beautiful thing. And that's really all I do, man. I'm just living just like anybody else. Um, I have seen some dark days, and I have come back to the light, and I have found life to be worth living. I have found love in places that I feel very undeserving. I have friends that I know have my back, that I desperately need. I have found um, a woman that cares for me in spite of all of my flaws and my background and my baggage that I carry, that I'm still working to get loose of. That can be true for anybody, no matter where you are, what you've done. Um, I think that uh, your soul is eternal, and what you do in this life matters a lot. Um, but that you should deeply consider how it is that you live, and what it is that you think about this life and the life that is to come. And I'm always open to talk to anybody about any of that stuff. Um, it's personally interesting to me. Talking about it in this way is a mechanism that fuels introspection personally, and it provides me an opportunity to sharpen my ability to communicate ideas and things that I find valuable or worthy of discussion. And really, it's like, I do a cool job. It's pretty cool. I won't lie, it's pretty cool. It's still a job.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get paid to go hunting. That's fun. That was like a pipe dream years and years ago. But I think that your journey is your own. I'm interested in all types and kinds of journeys. I'm a story person professionally. I try to create narrative personally. I'm interested in the discovery of narratives that are tangential or perhaps like wildly different than my own, because I'm a student of life, and um, I want to leave. I'm not so grandiose in my thinking that I'm like, I want to leave the world better than I found it. You know, I would like to, the thing that I have really circled the drain on in the last decade, and I have certainly made decisions and done things that are against this, but I try to keep this at top of mind. Is like I would like to become a man that is worthy of his children's admiration. I presently have no children yet. I know you're kind of a new father as of the last year or so. I don't have any kids yet. Um, New wife and I would like to have kids. If I'm blessed to have kids, like that's pretty much my target. Because if I live a life and love a woman that would lead my kids to admire the man that I've become, I think that that encompasses a lot. And that's pretty much the target, man. Um, I don't I don't think I can leave the world a better place. I'd like to just leave my home better. I'd like to create and be a shepherd of an environment that was perhaps just a little bit more safe than the one that I had growing up. Because I think that legacy is real, and I think that this life is fleeting, but that um, generational stewardship of a family line, that's really like we didn't really dig into the certain culture kind of moniker that I'm like workshopping what that is actually, but that is a belief in a tradition and a direction of family that is deeply rooted in the cultivation of um, what what I would call like healthy masculinity.
Yeah.
I'm still very much exploring what that means. I do not pretend to be an expert on that. But that is what I care about. That is what I am personally seeking after and toiling towards, pushing the boundary of how can I explore to become a better Craig Francis for myself? How can I be more healthy? How can I be a better husband? How can I position myself now so that I'm a better father later? How can I engage in conversations with people that are interested in what I do professionally so that that conversation might one day kick into a topic that is not professional but very human? And how can we just like help each other out as brothers and sisters who happen to be alive in 2025 on this planet, hurtling through space? And what does that mean for now? And what does it mean for later? So that's a super long rambling answer, but that's kind of what I'm about. I do most of that storytelling. Instagram is kind of my main channel. Anybody that thinks that I'm not like a crazy person can follow me on Instagram. You can find me at Craig Francis Creative on Instagram. My email is right there. Shoot me a note. Let me know what you got going on. I'll talk to anybody. Uh, that's what I'm about, man.
I love it. I appreciate that versus a little short answer. So details, getting into it and opening yourself up. I appreciate it big time, man. I seriously, I didn't go into this with expectations, but if I did, this would have blown them out of the water. I seriously appreciate the time. This was very cool to dive into your world a little bit. And like I said, there's so much more that I am curious about that I would love to spend time, whether on camera, on the record, or off, that hopefully someday we can make that happen.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I'd love to chat again.
Love it. All right, Craig, we're gonna wrap up. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you big time. And enjoy your weekend after a 91-hour work week.
I didn't work quite that long this week, but I did. I put some hours in. I will enjoy it. I hope you do the same, bro.
Awesome. All right, man. We'll be in touch. See
All
ya.
right.
See ya.
See you, bro.